Florida Republican Congressman Byron Donalds joins us now. Congressman, great to see you. He is running to be the next governor of Florida. He has already received President Trump's endorsement and hopes that remains an exclusive endorsement. We may deal with that or we may not. But, Congressman, good to see you.
It's good to be with you.
When you think about where the nation is tonight, with the beginning of tariffs against Canada and Mexico and China last night, how long, sir, do you expect what sounds like and may look like a trade war to continue?
Look, first and foremost comes the security of the United States, the security of the American people. Fentanyl is the #1 killer of people between the ages of 18 and 45. You have to make sure that that doesn't come to the United States. So President Trump has been clear. He is serious about this tariff measure because he wants to make sure that China steps up, that Mexico steps up, and that Canada steps up. Number 2 is securing the southern border. He's been very clear about what his intentions are. He's been following through from day one. And all that we are asking is that our neighbors to the north and south act in kind with what we are trying to do so all countries can be safe and work together cohesively.
And, Congressman, when Mexican authorities say, well, you know, we hear you on fentanyl, but we have a problem coming to us from America, illegal guns which arm the cartels, is that a legitimate complaint?
No, it's not even on the same level. The reason why is you have the cartel. They might actively buy illegal weapons, but you're talking about fentanyl coming into our country. You have kids who've taken simple medication, things like a Valium or something like that, dying of a fentanyl overdose. It is not the same thing. And so we've been calling on, and we've been very clear about our expectations. We want our neighbors to work with us to get this done. When they meet that expectation, then we'll have another conversation. But until then, Donald Trump not only promised the American people what he was going to do, but he has a responsibility, and he's going to follow through to make sure he does what Joe Biden failed to do, which is secure the United States of America.
And when the Canadian Prime Minister says, as he did today, that more meth and cocaine came into Canada in January than fentanyl came from Canada into the United States, is that a legitimate point?
No, I don't think it's fully legitimate because we also have an illegal immigration problem coming from Canada. And let's be very clear, you don't have poor families or poor people in Central America, South America, going all the way to Canada to come into our country. So that's why I'm not listening to what Justin Trudeau says or what any other leader is saying. Donald Trump is the president of the United States. He's going to put our national security interests above other nations. And so if they work with us, we will work with them, and everything will be fine. So this is really an opening measure to demonstrate how serious we are. This matters to the American people. It's one of the key things that occurred in our election season. It's why Donald Trump is president. And to Mr. Trudeau and anybody else, we're going to follow through on that commitment.
Congressman, what do you expect the president to say about Ukraine? And from your vantage point, what have the last 4 days said about the president's approach there?
The president's going to be clear. He wants peace. He was clear in the Oval. He was clear on the campaign trail. He wants an end to the death. He wants peace in that region. The deal that is on the table for Vladimir Zelensky to sign is the right deal for Ukraine going forward. It actually helps them get the economic investment into Ukraine to rebuild after the war, and it also helps make the American taxpayer whole. There's nothing wrong with that. So for Zelensky to come in and try to lecture us about what's been going on in the region, when quite frankly, the American people are the ones that have been funding this effort for Ukraine to maintain their sovereignty, was disrespectful and out of line. So I think the president's whole view is going to be, we are here for peace. When Vladimir Zelensky is ready to sign the deal, he has willing partners here in the United States.
Congressman, I mentioned you're running for governor. Related to an issue that has just broken this afternoon in Florida, the current Attorney General of Florida has announced he's opened a criminal investigation against Andrew Tate and his brother Tristan, because in Romania, where they just came to Florida from, there were charges of rape, sex with minor, and trafficking, human trafficking. Do you support the Attorney General's actions here?
I do. I think those allegations have to be fully investigated, and then we go from there. The key thing is we don't tolerate the trafficking of women or, frankly, the abuse of women. We do not tolerate that. So if the Attorney General finds cause under Florida law to investigate that, then I wish him the best, and I support whatever he's going to do on that matter.
Are Andrew and Tristan Tate welcome in Florida?
No, quite frankly not. Because if you listen to some of the dialogue, I find it to be demeaning and disgusting. That's not about being an alpha male. It's not about being a strong man. What they stand for, in my view, is something totally different.
Florida Congressman Republican Byron Donalds. Thank you, sir. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.